If you need prayer or have questions, email Annamarie at 5minutesadayWithGod@gmail.com. Be sure to like and subscribe to our videos so that more people can hear the Word of God.
Good morning and welcome to 5 Minutes a Day, and welcome to Wednesday in February 7th. And this story, this next part, I've always kind of found it a little fascinating and interesting, because here Abram he went on this big journey with God, right? He's going into Canaan, he's leaving everything behind. But then at the first sign of problems, he resorts to his own inclination, right? His own way of doing things. And so he reacts out of fear instead of trust. So today's is Abram in Egypt, today's passage, and it's found in Genesis 12:10-20. So I want you to go ahead and read it. And basically what happened here is there was famine in the land, right? And so what Abram was wrong in thinking that God would not provide his needs in the place where God had called him to live. Did you get that? God had called him to live in Canaan. But then, because the first sight of hunger, right, the famine was happening, and he reacted out of fear, and he didn't trust that God called him to live there. And so wouldn't God provide for him, right? And so we notice there's no indication here in this passage that Abram stopped to inquire. He didn't say, okay, God, should I stay here? Because God called Abram to Canaan. God didn't call Abram to go to Egypt. But he acted out of fear, and he goes in. And so here's another thing, he acted out of fear. So he's in Egypt. And so his wife, Sarah, apparently was very beautiful. And so we think she's probably around 60 at this time, but because of their lifespans, she was probably seemed like a young 30. So is probably when she came out. So she was probably really beautiful. And so Abram again reacts in fear. So he reacts in fear of leaving Canaan and going to Egypt because of food. And he reacts in fear because Sarah is beautiful, and he's worried that the king and would maybe have him killed so that he can have his wife. So instead of saying that she is his wife, he says that she is his sister, which is true, but it was a lie that he didn't say that she was his wife. So here we see him entangled in his deception. All right, so the problem. So here's the issue here. The problem with Abraham is he found it easier to trust God in the far off promise than in the right now needs. Wow, isn't that true? For us as well, right? We can believe the far off promise. Okay, God's going to do this. God says he's going to provide for me. God's never going to leave me. God's going to do all these things. But then right now, it's going to start to struggle with the money that we might have right now, with the bills that we have. We think, well, I don't know right now if God's going to provide for me. Maybe in the future, right? And that's the problem with Sarai and Abram. So he goes, and the Egyptians saw that Sarai was beautiful. And so Pharaoh's officials saw her, and they took Sarai into Pharaoh's house. But then the Lord inflicted all these diseases on them. And then they go to him and go, what did you say? What did you do to us? Right? And he said in verse 18, so Pharaoh summoned Abram, what have you done to me? Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister, so that I took her to be my wife? So now here is your wife, leave. Okay? So here's the thing, even in this situation, we see God's mercy and grace here, right? Because Pharaoh could have had him killed for lying. But God blessed him even when he didn't deserve to be blessed, right? God continued to protect Abram even when Abram was a liar. And so we see so many nuggets here in this passage, just of Abram. he wasn't perfect, and he struggled at the beginning, right? He struggled to fully trust God to provide for him in the right now. And he went to his own way of thinking by self-protection, of saying that Sarai was just his sister and not his wife. But God showed grace and mercy to him and provided for him and rescued him from the situation. So here's a little side note that to think about for later. Okay, so later we're going to hear about Hagar, but this is where Sarai got Hagar. So remember Hagar, her slave, who's an Egyptian. This is where, in this time period when they were visiting Egypt, this is where she got Sarai. So here's another, we'll see later, Hagar becomes a great source of big trouble for Abram's family. And so we see here this time in Egypt was not a good time for them. They should have never left Canaan, right? So when they were there, also Sarai resorted to the culture of getting a slave person, of buying the slave girl. And that was culture. That's not necessarily what God wanted for them. So just kind of a little nugget for later, that there's still, even though God rescued them and he protected them, there's still consequences that they're going to face for their bad choices that they made in Egypt. All right, have a good day, and we'll see you tomorrow. And remember, 5 minutes a day in the Word can change your life.